Scotland has a proud railway tradition, and her steam heritage has been kept alive by a number of preserved railways. Foremost amongst these is the Bowness and Kinneil Railway, home to the Scottish Railway Preservation Society, who operate on their own line as well as on such classic routes as the Highland Main Line. In Glasgow, a museum of transport has preserved locomotives from all the major Scottish railways, while further north, the Strathspey provides an exciting attraction for tourists. Industrial railways are represented by the Scottish Industrial Railway Centre near Ayr, as well as the small but dynamic railway society at Preston Grange in East Lothian. Finally, at Brechin, the old Caledonian Railway has been resurrected to the delight of both visitor and enthusiast.
We start at Bowness on the Firth of Forth. Since 1979, this has been the base for the Scottish Railway Preservation Society and a 4-mile line created on a greenfield site. But the society had its origins in the early 60s, when the acquisition of a Caledonian tank engine led to the opening of a depot in Falkirk. Since then, they've developed a very impressive collection of Scottish locomotives and rolling stock.
It's early morning at Bowness as Sovereign and number 3 prepare for their day's duties. Sovereign, number 44871, is a Black 5, built in 1945 for the London, Midland and Scottish Railway. Designed by Sir William Stanier, these mixed traffic locomotives were so successful that well over 800 were built. Number 3 is an 040 saddle tank built by Andrew Barclay of Kilmarnock in 1928. She came to the SRPS after working for the South of Scotland Electricity Board at Clydesmill Power Station. Maud, number 673, is also being steamed today. This C-class North British 060 was built in 1891 for general goods traffic. It formed the most numerous class on the North British Railway. In 1915, number 673 was rebuilt and taken to France for war work, being named after Lieutenant General Maud on her return. Coaling was once tackled by hand, but modern conveyors speed up the process and make life easier for the crew. As befits a locomotive with such history and charisma, Maud is the working flagship of the SRPS. In 1980, she took part in the Rainhill Trial Centenary celebrations, and in 1984, she ushered in the return of regular steam to the West Highland Line. Shunting duties fall to diesel locomotive number 5351, an XBR Class 27 Bobo built in Birmingham in 1961. These 72-ton diesel electrics are now withdrawn, but were once very common throughout Scotland. The Caledonian signal box is from Garn Queen South Junction near Coatbridge, while the footbridge is from Merthley to the north of Perth. The large expanse of windows gives the signalman an excellent view. Up at the far end of the station, beyond the points, stands the tender of Glen Douglas, number 256. This North British K, or Glen Class 440, dates from 1913 and is being restored on behalf of the Museum of Transport in Glasgow. The coaches are to serve as a stationary buffet, but first they must be shunted into place alongside the platform.
It's a cold morning and the points are stiff, while across the Forth behind Longannet Power Station, snow has fallen on the Southern Highlands. The dock beyond the line was once a busy harbour, with hoists to tip coal directly from the railway wagons into the holds of the waiting ships.
Saddle tank number 3 cannot yet move under her own steam, so the Class 27 lends a hand. Once in position in front of the coaches, number 3 comes into her own, providing the steam heating for the buffet. Maud pulls out of the yard and through the station to make up the first passenger train of the day, while Class 27 clears the running line. While we wait for Maud to leave, the operating secretary, Peter Howell, expands on the role of the society.
I'm one of the directors of the Scottish Railway Preservation Society. We were set up in 1961, just after the modernisation plan was announced, and the idea was that we would save something of steam railways for the posterity in Scotland. We had a fairly shaky start, but over the years we've managed to build up this railway here at Bowness. One of the things the Society has been quite good at over the years is collecting together locomotives and carriages and wagons. We believe that we have a fairly comprehensive selection of both mainline engines and industrial engines, both steam and diesel, and over the last few years we've got a fair good collection of mainline diesels come to us. We've also got a fairly comprehensive collection of both LNER, LMS and BR coaches, and indeed we've got 2 Caledonian coaches, 1 Great North of Scotland coach and other things of that nature. We've also got a pretty comprehensive collection of wagons, both old wooden ones and more recent ones up to the 1950s, 1960s.
Amidst clouds of steam, Maud finally leaves for Birkhill. The line may be only 4 miles long, but on a busy weekend the carriages are full, with about 300 passengers on each train. Pulling out along the foreshore, the line passes the site of the Old Tree 1956 station. There's now no trace of this, or of the sidings and timber yard which once lined the Bowness shore. Before running into Kinneil, Maud crosses reclaimed land, where the railway was cut short for several years by an underground pipeline. Bowness was once a great centre of industry, producing iron, coal and timber, but all that had now disappeared. The final closure of Kinneil Colliery had prompted the sale of the BR branch line to the Scottish Railway Preservation Society. Kinneil Halt, the railway's terminus between 1986 and 88, is now only a request stop, and trains rarely pause here, on their way up the line.
Beyond Kinneil, a new bridge carries the A904 over the line. Here the track joins the old branch line, and for the first time the engine has to work hard. From here to Birkhill, the line rises 1 in 95. Birkhill Station is only a few years old. The building comes from Moneyfeed in Angus. The cutting here had to be widened to accommodate the station and passing loop. Passenger trains terminate at Birkhill. Beyond it, the line continues for another mile to Manuel, where it joins the Edinburgh-Glasgow main line.
For the return working, we join number 44871. This splendid locomotive is popular with both drivers and passengers, and is never short of enthusiastic admirers. Sovereign is still kept busy with the mainline operations, working the West Highland Line, as well as travelling south to take part in the anniversary run of the famous 15 Guinness Special. The Highland Main Line runs for 118 miles from Perth to Inverness, and although never electrified, it's very rare to see preserved steam on this line.
On a misty November day in 1992, the first steam train for over 10 years ran between Stirling and Inverness, thanks to a special excursion organised by ScotRail and the Scottish Railway Preservation Society. Sovereign was the ideal choice of locomotive, as these Stanier Black Fives were once familiar sights on the Highland Line. Sovereign's owners were due to travel up after the locomotive. On another platform, their Class 37 and support coach waits patiently, while BR's regular traffic clears the line to the north.
A Class 158 pulls into the platform alongside Sovereign, and she is soon given the road. The Black Fives were 5 mixed-traffic Class 460s, with many built by firms at Horwich, Derby, the Vulcan Foundry, and in Sovereign's case, Crewe. All 842 were still in service until 1959, and many of them worked until the last days of steam in 1968. North of Perth, the old Highland Railway follows the rivers Tay and Tummel until the line branches north through the narrow defile of Killiecrankie. Here, Sovereign hugs the steeply wooded hillside before plunging into the Killiecrankie tunnel. Between Blair Athol and Dolchwinnie, the line is double track and steepens to 1 in 70 on the 16-mile-long climb. At Dalmacarbach, near the start of the long incline, Sovereign climbs up into the mist and has to work hard to maintain speed. In steam days, doubleheading was common on the heavier passenger and goods trains. The climb to the summit of Drumachar is still a demanding task. At 1,484 feet, it is the highest summit in the country. Having arrived at Dolchwinnie, Sovereign takes a brief rest. The pause gives an opportunity to see the splendid locomotive at close quarters. Dozens of people have gathered on the platform to watch her depart. But before leaving, there is a wait for the passage of a northbound Class 158.
Further south in Glasgow, we find the Museum of Transport. It's now in the former Kelvin Hall. Glasgow's magnificent railway exhibition represents a fine effort by a municipal authority to preserve a representative collection of the area's railways. The museum is introduced by curator Alistair Smith.
Glasgow Museums opened their original Museum of Transport in 1964. By the mid-1960s, discussions were going on with the British Rail Board to find out about the possibility of representatives of the 5 major Scottish railway companies being included in the Transport Museum. And in 1966, 5 locomotives were earmarked for the museum and were added to the collections over the later 60s. From that time, the locomotives representing the major companies were on show in the old museum in Albert Drive, and since our relocation in the Kelvin Hall have been on display since 1988. Perhaps the most famous locomotive in Glasgow's collections is the Caledonian Railway locomotive number 123, which was built by Nielsen's to the order of Dougal Drummond, and it took part in the famous railway races between London and Edinburgh in 1888 and performed exceedingly well, particularly over the steeply gradiented northerly section from Carlisle to Carstairs, and it achieved speeds in excess of 70 miles an hour. The locomotive was significant in that it also was the last single driver in operation on British Rail tracks.
Other items on display include this primitive and unique design of an industrial locomotive. Built in Glasgow in 1883, this simple and robust 040 has a vertical boiler and was intended for light shunting. Number 103 and number 49 are from the Highland and the Great North of Scotland Railways. 103 is a 460 Jones Goods of 1894, while number 49, Gordon Highlander, is a 440 mixed traffic locomotive built in 1920. Both are fine examples of the work of their respective railways. From the same period is this Royal Breakfast Barrow, while other more mundane items such as this line-side border sign, as well as station and locomotive nameplates, are also on display. A fine collection of models, including many examples of engines no longer in existence, testify the importance of the now vanished Glasgow locomotive manufacturing industry.
Glasgow Museum's tram collection was the raison d'etre for the original Transport Museum founded in 1964. Trams disappeared from the streets of Glasgow in September 1962, and for the final procession, a number of vehicles which had been earmarked over the years for preservation were brought up to final running standard and were transferred from the old Copland Hill Works to part of the old works which became the original Museum of Transport. And we show trams from the earliest days of horse-drawn vehicles up to the last double-deck tram built in Glasgow, tram number 1392, which was built in 1954 and operated until 1962.
The Strathspey Railway runs from Aviemore to Boat of Garton and lies in the shadow of the Cairngorm Mountains. British Rail's Highland Main Line runs right through the resort of Aviemore, bringing people from all over Britain to enjoy the area's skiing, walking and wildlife, as well as the steam locomotives of the Strathspey Railway. "5 miles down the valley, Boat of Garton takes its name from the chain-operated ferry which once crossed the River Spey. Now it's the railway's terminus. In 1972, the Strathspey Railway Company purchased a section of the old Highland Line to Forres, and with the help of the Highlands and Islands Development Board, reopened it for tourists. Today, number 60, a Hunslet 060 saddle tank built in 1948 for the National Coal Board, is running the passenger service.
The Straths Bay owns and maintains a variety of locomotives, and its coaching stock includes Pullman cars, vintage coaches, British Rail Mark 1s and older wooden wagons. The new line's been operating regularly since 1979, attracting about 50,000 passengers a year. But the preservation of the regional character of the line is an important objective. Existing buildings have been carefully restored, and other railway structures have been re-erected. A new Boat of Garten station replaced the original, which was burnt down in 1904.
The line was opened in 1863 by the Inverness and Perth Junction Railway. The Straths Bay Railway own the track bed as far as Granton, a further 7 miles down the valley, and plans to reopen this section of the line in the near future. Locomotive barks its way up the bank out of Boat of Garten and pushes up the widening Strath at the foot of the mighty Cairn Gorms. Here the track is lined by silver birch as well as by native pines from the Caledonian forest, which once covered much of the Scottish Highlands. The Doon Valley to the southeast of Ayr is home to the Scottish Industrial Railway Centre, who plan to reopen a 2-mile stretch of the line to passengers. The centre is based on the former Dalmellington Iron Company railway system, which was one of the best-known industrial networks in Britain. It was steam-worked until 1978, when the system closed. It is the aim of the centre to recreate part of the railway. The Ayrshire Railway Preservation Group are currently attempting to restore a number of industrial locomotives. This 040 diesel mechanical loco was built by Andrew Barclay in 1956, a Kilmarnock manufacturer who also built many of the system's steam locomotives.
The Ayrshire Railway Preservation Group was set up 19 years ago, and we moved to our site at Minivay in 1980. Since 1989, we've been working with the Dalmellington District Conservation Trust to set up proper visitor services in the area. We hope that within the next couple of years, by 1995, we'll have a proper restored railway, steam railway service running between our site here and Minivay, hoping to attract in something like 150,000 visitors per year to the area. When we actually get the steam service up and running, we initially expect to start with Andrew Barclay 040 number 10, which actually worked at the mines in this area, so it's very much a home from home for that particular loco. But we hope as well to restore number 8, another Andrew Barclay, which is an 060, a larger locomotive which is more suited to pulling the passenger service.
A return to the Firth of Forth now for a visit to Preston Grange in East Lothian. Here, an industrial museum commemorates 800 years of the coal and salt industries. The principal exhibit is the Cornish beam pumping engine built by Harvey and Company of Hale in 1874, but the former brickworks and harbour are also preserved. East Lothian District Council managed the site, but in 1978 the Preston Grange Railway Society was formed with the object of operating a short standard gauge railway, and today they employ both steam and diesel motive power.
It's a small but interesting setup, involved with the past history, social and otherwise, of this area. I'm primarily concerned with running the railway section down here, which we feel is important. There was a lot of development of railways in this area in early times, and a lot of the things you see on the museum here are founded round the railway point of view. At the moment we are about 12 strong altogether, of which about 8 are active members at any one time. We like it, it's good, it's a small society, probably one of the smallest in the country I would think, and it works very well.
Several locomotives are operating today. Number 2, an 040 diesel mechanical engine, is the Society's latest acquisition. Named George Edwards, it was built in 1956 by Ruston and Hornsby, arriving at Preston Grange towards the end of 1993 by courtesy of ICI. Having pulled number 6 up from the sheds, number 2 must clear the running line before shunting the brake van on to number 6 in order to make up the passenger train. Number 6 is an 040 saddle tank built by Andrew Barclay in 1937 and was donated by the National Coal Board in 1982. Coal and railways have a long history here. The first record of mining in Britain was a charter granted in 1210 to work the coal of the Grange of Preston. The first coal harbour, Atchison's Haven, lay across the road, while the first railway in Scotland was laid on wooden rails from Tranent to Cockenzie, some 3 miles down the coast.
Our collection of locomotives range from a 1914 Grant Ritchie, which we also believe is totally unique but unfortunately doesn't work at the moment, to the more common sort of products from Andrew Bartley of Kilmarnock, which we run at the moment. One of the other interesting items we have on the site is a vintage steam crane. We believe it was built in the 1860s and came from Lady Victoria Colliery near Newton Grange in West Lothian, which we're able to steam not very often because it's an awkward machine to raise steam on and slow, but we do use it occasionally for test purposes and laying track and that sort of thing. It's a very interesting piece of machinery and worth coming to see.
About once a month, the Society operates passenger trains along a short length of track adjacent to the beam engine. An ex-Southern Railway single veranda brake van from 1923 is used to convey visitors up and down the line.
The lot heat up, it's cold. It's not just the water.
Leaving Preston Grange, there's a glimpse of an English electric Vulcan diesel hydraulic as she gently pulls past the sheds. We finish with Scotland's most recent steam line, the Caledonian Railway at Brechin. The station was first opened in 1848 by the Aberdeen Railway Company and reopened for passengers in 1991. Activity commences here at Bridge of Doon, some 4 miles down the line. Reminders of the original Caledonian Railway contrast with a rather neglected Ivet Class 2MT, while Bagnall Saddle Tank number 6 prepares to take a rake of coaches up the line.
My name is Max Maxwell. I'm the engine driver for today. The engine behind me is our number 6. She's Bagnall 2749, built in 1944 for the Army. She's an austerity type locomotive found on many preserved railways today, and she's actually about the ideal size for a railway of this size, which is about 4 miles long.
As number 6 pulls into Brechin, the morning sun illuminates the station buildings. Brechin station was enlarged in 1887 to accommodate the increase in traffic resulting from the opening of the Forfar and Brechin and the Brechin and Edzell railways. The North British also had running powers into the station. As passengers begin to arrive, the ticket offices open for business, and the railway's publicity director, Ian Smith, who also doubles as station master, takes a few minutes off to recall the resurrection of the line.
Well, the railway actually came about by the formation of the Brechin Railway Preservation Society. The idea being to preserve the branch line from Bridge of Dun to Brechin when it closed. The society was formed in 1979, and it had quite a good response from the locals. The railway itself was open at that time, and when it closed in 1981 we were able to gain a foothold here, and eventually after much hard work we obtained a light railway order in 1991 and began running trains the full length of the line. The track itself was in fairly bad condition when we took over, and we had to bring it up to a standard which the railway inspector would then allow us to run. This was done, as I say, after much hard work, and now this last 2 seasons or so we've been running and just sort of trying to make ends meet, trying to improve the railway bit by bit, and hopefully we're succeeding in that respect.
Before departing, number 6 must still make up a train, a fine rake of 3 XBR blood and cream coaches. Bridge of Doom and the end of the line. The railway hopes to eventually continue the service another 3 miles to Dupton, but for the time being, this is where number 6 runs around a train before beginning the journey back to Brechin.